in these young persons institutions, you have a lot of very good professionals, but some of them, of course, don't work as well as they should, and often this gives rise to problems when there's a divorce and there's a dispute over who has guardianship of a child, for example, and such cases, of course, can be very painful for the people involved. And it would seem then, in the case of the Jugendamt, that you don't have one person you can address or one office you can address in the case of a complaint, or in the case of people feeling their European rights have been infringed. Now, since this trip to Berlin, every day in my office, there have been people approaching us, it seems, asking for their complaints or problems with the Jugendamt to be resolved. There are complaints arriving daily in our secretariat. So there are repeated problems, it seems, with the Jugendamt. And what seems to happen most frequently is when you have a couple separating, they agree on who shall have guardianship of a child and on visiting arrangements. And normally there's a written agreement. But if the relationship between the separated parents worsens and one of them goes back abroad to where they came from and wants to make it possible for children to visit them in their home country outside Germany, in these cases it's very easy, if relationships have deteriorated, for the German parents who go to the Jugendamt and say that there's the risk of the child being kidnapped or taken away, in which case the bureaucratic machine gets working and the guardianship rights and visiting rights of the non-German parent are immediately stopped. The children are kept from them. They're kept in Germany with the German parent, not on the basis of proof that there has been a kidnapping or that there will be, but on the basis of the German parent's suspicion. In that case, the non-German parent is confronted with a hellish bureaucratic machine which will cost them time and money, and the procedures can go on for years before the non-German parent understands how an appeal can be made, which is normally in any case impossible in Germany. So time passes by. Now, all this happens in order to avoid possible abductions of children outside Germany. And often, after procedures have gone on for years and years and the child hasn't seen the non-German parent, it's all very traumatic for the child, especially when they're reunited with the non-German parent, perhaps after many years. And often it's just a case of a parent wishing to see their child, quite innocently. Now, this sort of case occurs fairly frequently. Certainly, we've been informed of a great number of such cases. I mean, that doesn't mean to say there are problems with all problems dealt with the Jugendamt are like this, but we do receive a constant flow of such problems, with people complaining that they need the cases to be dealt with urgently by the Jugendamt, although they're not dealt with urgently, and there's no effective control over the Jugendamt to make sure that cases are dealt with expeditiously. And this leads to all sorts of phenomena. For example, you have organisations springing up to protest against this situation, and often these organisations are quite extreme in their views, notwithstanding the fact that they do help the parents get their children back or have access to their children. In some cases they're so extreme, though, that they do try to assist parents in kidnapping their children to take them out of Germany back to the non-German parents' home country. And that's the sort of thing we should be trying to do something about and seeking to ensure it doesn't happen. Again, that's something which is really a little out of our hands here in Brussels. Now, if you look at the European Human Rights Convention or the Charter of Fundamental Rights, some of the clauses in these charters are not properly dealt with by the Jugendamt. For example, the right of appeal against official decisions by an individual, the fact that there should be no discrimination on linguistic grounds, the fact that there should be a fair set of proceedings and for the participants to be involved with the results as soon as possible, the right to be heard in the case of an administrative decision being taken against your interests, access to documents and files, and access to the child. All these things in the Charter of Fundamental Rights and the Convention of Human Rights are frequently ridden over roughshod by the Jugendamt. They're not complied with nor respected with. And now these are criticisms which you won't only hear in this committee, but also in Germany, in the media, in the press. A lot of articles have been written about these problems. And often these cases become the subject of front-page headlines. And obviously these cases come to the notice of the media in the countries of origin of the non-German parents. Now, this is our second trip of this nature. This time we went to Berlin, and it seems to me, having spoken to everybody involved, we now have the Minister for Family Affairs offering to be the person we speak to about these cases. That means that we can now take the 4 or 5 cases we have used as illustrations of the problem to the Minister. We can do that. And these are cases in which it seems that citizens' rights have really not been complied with. So we have the opportunity now to go to the Minister for Family Affairs in Germany and get replies and get answers for these families who've brought their complaints to us. And that may give an opportunity to give satisfactory replies to the petitioners who brought these cases to us in the first place. And we hope that in the meantime, appropriate solutions will be found to this general problem. Looking at all the petitions we've received and all the petitions we continue to receive every day, especially since we've been to Berlin, it's impressive the number of complaints we're receiving. And it seems to me that there's a structural problem, an organisational problem in Germany. Now, I don't want to go into detailed criticism of the German system. I don't think that's my job. But I would suggest that in Germany, the people concerned, the authorities concerned, think in terms of setting up a federal ombudsman and indeed ombudsman for each of the Länder. If people have somebody they can approach, such as an ombudsman, to whom they can take their cases, if you had a federal ombudsman or a land ombudsman who can work together with our ombudsman in the different European countries and the other European countries, I think it will make it possible for such cases to be solved much more quickly. Decisions will be able to be taken more quickly, either by the Jugendamt or in the courts. So in that way, if we have a system of ombudsmen, these problems can be dealt with more effectively. Otherwise, we're going to be receiving more and more petitions of this nature. So I believe that a proper complaints or appeals procedure should be set up in Germany. I'm sorry for taking so much time. The thing is, if you have also what we often do is we encourage petitioners to appeal to the authorities who've taken the decision against their interests. Well, that, of course, is wrong in principle. Just going straight back to the person who took the decision against you is not always helpful. You have to be able to appeal to an independent authority, and such an authority at the moment, it seems to me, does not exist in Germany. So I'm proposing that such an authority is established in the form of an ombudsman. Now, I'm looking forward to rapid replies now from the Minister for Family Affairs in Germany, and I hope that very soon there's a solution to these problems and a system can be devised in Germany to prevent such problems in the future. Mr. Wielander.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I'm very pleased that you were able to visit Berlin, to go on this trip organised by myself and Mr. Jahr. I'm very pleased that you were satisfied with the arrangements. Before I came to Parliament, I was a lawyer and I had to deal with a number of family cases. And I have to say, we, at the time in Germany, did have a system of mediators, that's to say judges, who would help settle cases involving disputes between people from different länder and between different countries, one of them being Germany. And this was a system, the system of judges acting as mediators did allow us to settle a great number of cases on a satisfactory basis and indeed rapidly, and that includes cases involving separated couples, one of the partners being a non-German. Now, this was your second trip of this nature, and it was necessary because the first trip was not entirely successful because the first trip to Berlin wasn't properly organised by us, I have to say, by us in the European Parliament. After the first trip, we had a single working document on an official report produced by just one of our members, which did not have the status of an official European Parliament document, was not reliable on its own, and this is why this second trip was necessary. I have to say this, though. It's a bit difficult. Perhaps it's due to the problems we have of translation. When Mr. Boulan talks about a hellish bureaucratic machine, when he talks about human rights being trampled over, when he uses that kind of terminology, implies that he believes that such things have happened on purpose. I would not say that's the case. It may well be that human rights have not been properly complied with in Germany in certain cases, but I wouldn't say that these events took place with intention. And if you were to say to me, people's rights have been trampled over, that implies that you think it's the intention. There was the intention to trample over people's human rights. I would say we have to be careful with terminology there. And I'd be very grateful if our rapporteur looked at the statistics. In fact, we have 80 million people in Germany and hundreds of thousands of divorces per year in Germany. And it would be interesting to see, how many of these divorces per thousand, for example, involve such infringements of human rights leading to the kind of complaints being taken to the Jugendamt. Now, in the case of maladministration by the Jugendamt, of course, people can take cases to courts. And, of course, court procedures in the individual member states can take a very long time. In civil courts, especially in the southern European countries, not France, the procedures are so slow that people from southern Europe, if they have a dispute with a parent in Germany, tend to say, well, let's try and see what we can do in the German courts or find a German mediator to help us. Now, not every case of potential child abduction involves the Jugendamt. And you also have to bear in mind that we're talking about very low percentages of difficulties, 1 in 100,000 or something like that. Now, one of the most difficult cases we've had to deal with, of course, is the Colombo case, where a child was actually abducted, taken to a third country, illegally, outside Europe. In that case, the child just was not there, and there was no legal recourse open to the German parent, given that the child just wasn't present in Europe.